I'm Jessica Anne Pressler, and you've tuned into Your Traitor Within, a podcast that exposes the brutal truths of healing, self discovery, and breaking free from relentless patterns of self sabotage. Today, on Your Traitor Within podcast, Barbara Eckert and I will be discussing our adoption stories and how being adopted helps shape our traitor within. Barbara, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jess.
So we just got off doing an Instagram live on adoption, and that particular live and a blog that I have out it talks about some theories and some therapies. But I think today we're going to concentrate more on our stories, as we do on Your Trader Within podcast, and how it has affected who we are today, how we feel about ourselves, how we show up in relationships, and how it has been at least partially responsible for shaping our trader within.
Yes, I thank you for having this platform because I didn't even have the words before you and I had talked about this a few years ago of
Mhm.
what that was. Like, I just thought it was just a part of me, and I didn't realize it was a part of me that was protecting me at the time, but was taking the wheel and creating relationships and creating things that were inauthentic. And
Mhm.
I want to thank you for pointing that out and having those conversations a few years ago so that I could name what was going on with me.
Yeah, I think naming it and then understanding is vital in the healing process. And again, as you pointed out, I have great compassion for my traitor within. And I do believe that our traitor within, even so the word traitor, but our traitor within has really good intentions. It just hyper focuses on something and then overlooks all the other pieces of who we are or what's going on in our lives that it's affecting. But its intentions are good. So it's just coming to peace with that and saying thank you very much. It's a protective part. So thank you very much for trying to protect us. But it's time to let me take control and do what's healthier for me now. And in the case of this podcast, a part of who shaped my trader within was the fact that I was adopted, and it was something that I didn't really fully recognize. I understood initially that what was affecting me in my romantic relationship, because I didn't have this piece in other relationships and friendships or work, but in my romantic relationship, it showed up, which is not uncommon for someone's wounds to show up in intimate relationships and in romantic relationships because they're intimate. But I came to these relationships with an overwhelming fear, but underlying fear of abandonment, and that I always believed was caused by my relationship with my um, mother, the one that brought me up, because there's all kinds of stuff going on there. But I overlooked the adoption. I would always say, you know what, I was adopted at birth, so there's no issues and da 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 da. Even so, I will tell my story. You can even see as I tell the story where the issues would be. But I poo-pooed it. I said, the fact that I was adopted at birth, it must not have affected me at all. It all has to do with my relationship with my adoptive mother. To realize, of course, after doing the work, that the fact that I was adopted does play a part in fear of abandonment. And I think that most people would look at me and say, of course it does. Of course, fear of abandonment would be, somewhere rooted in adoption. So I will share my story and then I will turn it to you to share yours. And we have a slightly, different story, of course, but I believe both of them played a part. It may not be every reason why if you're traded. Okay. So I was adopted at birth. 3 days, I was in an incubator for 3 days, but basically I never, my mother, my birth mother never saw me. She was actually put out, meaning she was put to sleep. And I was born, she never touched me. She never looked at me. She never held me. So I never had that. I was put in an incubator because I was born at 7.5 months. So I was tiny, and then given over in a motel parking lot to my adoptive parents, Sylvia and David. And then they took me away, and I was taken away with a baby nurse, and the two of them, they're working, and lived 9.5 or 9.75 of my life believing I was their natural child, and never thought differently. And actually, those earlier years were, I have pretty good memories with about those years. And then being taken to my favorite place in the whole wide world, Indian Lake, and then told by the lake that I was adopted, that my birth parents were both dead. One died in Vietnam, which I don't even think made sense. I don't think we were there yet, or I don't know. Just looking back now, even, but who knew at 9 years old, right? That my father died in Vietnam and my birth mother died in childbirth. So I was left with, you're adopted. Oh, and we could have sent you back. It was like probably a 5 minute conversation. All that was in there. So here I am at 9.5 years old, being told that everything I believed is not true, or how I felt anyway, that I was adopted, which I didn't quite understand, that there was the mother and father had died, so there was no chance I was ever going to meet them or understand them or learn about them or touch them or whatever, or ask questions, and that I killed my mother because she died in childbirth. And then literally after that 5 to 10 minute conversation, they never talked about it. They never brought it up again. We walked back up and went to breakfast, as if it never occurred with my cousins, who I thought were my, blood cousins. Now I'm looking at them. It was all my father's cousins. And I'm like, I like, am I even related to you now? And suppressing it. So then I actually didn't think about it for years. I like don't think I did, and then brought it up later on after having a dream in my teens that, what was this true? Did this really happen? And then getting some truths at that point. So and at that point being told that they believed that my birth parents were both alive. Or they didn't have any reason to think they weren't. They don't know if they were checking up on them after all those years, but that what they told me was wrong, not true. And then a few years later, being told, having my father open up my records to try to help me, which I felt very guilty about, by the way, because I didn't want to hurt him, because you don't talk about it, because, there's all kinds of messaging too. You don't talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it because, of course, let me go backwards a little bit about the traitor. So what it did for me at a very young age is I had to be the good girl, because one of the things they said to me is, we could have sent you back. I heard, um, I can always send you back. So I learned from that moment on that I had to be the good girl. I had to be invisible. I had to, now I'm not saying I was perfect, but that was my intention. And if I failed, I was scared. And and I had to be the good girl, and I had to be, you know, so I did, and being a feeling person in general, I never wanted to hurt them. I never wanted to, so I didn't ask a lot of questions. I did this one piece, and then I tried to find things out on my own. And then my father did offer to open up my records, and we'll get there in a minute. So this person that I was this person that had to be the, I guess, very aware of their feelings, very aware of their actions, very didn't speak at the dinner table. I also was very insecure, which probably was a piece of this too, and a piece of who my parents are too, and their, the way that they talked to me and treated me. Also, I felt not smart. So on top of that, combined with, terrified that I'm going to say or do something to be sent back, um, I tried my best to be the good girl. And that was that traitorous piece where it served me feeling safe, or tried to make me feel safe in my childhood, was brought into my romantic relationships, because the people I was involved with long term started off being, healthy. I mean, it wasn't healthy, but I thought it was healthy. I did not, no relationship started off being dysfunctional. I definitely walked away from those. So I started off, but I would be getting involved in a relationship, being intimate, love, and then they would change. And I had to change with that relationship. I had to start over. I had to overlook what was happening. I had to deny what was happening. I had to bury what was happening. I had to try to be the good girl. In the moments that I would confront a situation in these relationships, And I would sometimes, because that would be my trigger. I would, and then my traitor within would swoop in and say, "Oh, no, 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 no confrontation. You're going to forget this happened. You're going to blame yourself for it happening. You're going to make excuses for it happening, and you're going to carry on." And that was the traitor. And
And it started at 9 years old.
and it started at 9 years old. So, and it continued most of my, not now, I'm in a healthy relationship, but it doesn't, I'm also not being triggered that way. Who knows? Like I will never, I'm hoping I did all the work. And if I was ever confronted with that, I would, and part of the, part of the understanding, part of the piece is understanding what's happening so that you can stop it. So
Yeah.
let me know your story.
So my story is I was born to a 17-year-old woman, and I was given up for adoption. And she was in what's called the Women's Foundling Hospital in New York City. She gave birth to me, and I was immediately taken away into the nursery, where I was in the Foundling Hospital for about 5 months before my adoptive parents were able to come and get me. Because at the time, it was not a private adoption, which it sounds like yours may have been, where it was two people coming together. My parents adopted me through an agency, and there was a waiting period before we could be connected. So for that first 5 months, I was in an orphanage in a foundling hospital. And then I came to my adoptive parents, and they were very excited. They had been going through infertility for 5+ years and had waited for me. They had been waited 2 years to adopt me. And when I came home, they sent out a birth announcement. We've adopted a little girl. And that went out to friends and family. And so everybody knew I was adopted. So from a very young age, they would use the words, "You're our beautiful adopted daughter." And as I got older, they kept saying this. And I'd say, "But what does that mean?" And they'd say, "We chose you. You didn't come to us through birth, but we chose you." And that was beautiful until I was probably around 7 or 8, and actually questioned one day, "Well, do you know my birth parents, or do you know how I could get in touch with them?" I'm not sure the exact verbiage, but it was an immediate, like, my mom's face turned white as a ghost. And she goes, "Why would you want to know that? Aren't we good enough?"
Which is her
And
wound.
that's her core wound,
Right.
exactly. But what it did at that 7 or 8-year-old child was, don't ask questions. Don't
Mhm.
ask questions that are going to be uncomfortable for others. And I had that, basically that same feeling of, be the good little girl,
Mhm.
keep your voice shut, don't
Mhm.
ask the questions, and just move on. So for many, many years, it turned into, my traitor turned into, I didn't want to be abandoned. I didn't want to be sent back. I didn't want to be feel other. So I was the good little girl, and it turned into being a people pleaser.
Mhm.
And I know we've talked about this, and it was that's my traitor within, is the fear of being abandoned made me into a person that others kind of molded.
Mhm.
And for many, 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 many years, I didn't speak my truth. And
Mhm.
I do keep that feeling that my adoption and my adoption story, or the lack of communication from
Mhm.
my adoption, or being able to talk to my parents about it, created this. Because then I kind of went underground, and you and I met in college.
Mhm.
And that's where my search for my birth mom kind of went underground. I didn't ask for help from my parents because I felt I would get that reaction of, "We're not good enough for you." And I would have disappointed them.
Right.
And then at that point, in that juncture too, it was actually my freshman year in college. I'd come home, and my sister and I had a really big argument. And my mother blurted out, "She is your only blood relative, so you should really make peace." And at the age of 18, I found out that my sister, who was also adopted into the family, was my half sister. We had the same birth mother, not the same birth father.
How did
So
you feel about that late tell?
that late tell, like, blew me away, because it was this feeling of, I had gone 18 years where they could have said this in 18 years and I didn't know this. And
Mhm.
it rocked my world, to be very honest. And that's another part of like the communication. But I didn't say anything. Like I could have like been like, Mom, why didn't you ever tell me this? But I didn't say a word.
Mhm.
I just took it and I just internalized it. And I was angry. I
Mhm.
was resentful. I had
Mhm.
all the feelings, but what did I do? I stuffed it down
Mhm.
because I didn't want to
Mhm.
disappoint my mom,
Mhm.
and had quite a few issues, as you know, going through college and just identity issues and
Mhm.
who am I really? And, going on that search to find my birth mother. And yeah, it was pretty traumatic.
And how did you feel when you found your birth mom? I mean, when you found the information and you.
So went to the library, and after many, many, many hours of searching, because all I had was my birth record and my date of birth. And
Mhm.
so went through all the birth records with my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband. And these books were this thick, and there were 5 of them from my birth year. And you would go line by line with a ruler. We would just make sure. And on book number 3, my husband hands it to me, and he just has a look in his eyes, and he said, "Look here." So I'm full body chills. He hands me the book, and I go line by line, and there it is, my birth name,
Mhm.
Jacqueline Marie Gussman.
Mhm.
And I'm like, whoa, like this validated
Mhm.
that piece of me.
Mhm.
And then I did search for my birth mom, to no avail. I was never able to locate. We did a kind of, back in 1982, 83, it was
Yeah.
calling people who had that last name in the phone book and
Mhm.
just not having information that readily available. And yeah, but it was always wondering, would I ever be able to meet her? Because
Right.
there was that piece.
Mhm.
Because I felt like I felt so blessed to have met you in college and be able to have you as a resource, because we were kind of going through this.
Mhm. Together.
But it was very isolating because I didn't know any other adopted
Mhm.
people.
Mhm. Partly because maybe people weren't being told then either. There probably were other adoptive people in our world, but just like, I wasn't told until later. I think that's, it was just people didn't have the knowledge then of what
Yes.
to do and the right way to, you
Well,
know,
the tools that
people.
you and I have gone through, and the
Mhm.
support group of like groups like Alma,
Mhm.
and a great therapist, and all of the other pieces to be able
Right.
to kind of reconcile
Mhm.
um, everything that kind of went down. Because as a 7-year old, I created stories in my mind of, well, I can't talk about this to anyone. That was
Mhm.
a story I created as a 7-year old. And
Yeah.
again, it became that traitor of, I can't talk about anything.
Right. It
So
takes it.
that core wound of me not being able to talk about my
Right.
adoption
Hmm.
activated that core wound of me not speaking and
Right.
creating that people pleaser who,
Right.
yeah.
So when I was doing the research for this and for the live that we did and for the blog, it talked about many people don't trust others. So
Yes.
for me, my Traitor Within did the opposite. It over trusted, I guess, if you want to look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's understandable not to trust others because if you, especially with someone who's told late in life, late in their development, as for me, it was almost 10 years old that I was adopted. Then you're like, what else didn't they say? And all, all that, the betrayal wound, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, though, I was so terrified of being abandoned that the traitor would say to me, you know, trust this person again and again and again. So I would, it would cause me to stay in situations that were not healthy because I would trust again and again. It didn't matter what they did to me. They could cheat on me on Saturday, and by Sunday night, I don't remember. I mean, it's not that I'm like dissociating exactly, but basically it's not emotional anymore that they had cheated. And
Mhm.
if I did have moments, because I did, I'm not saying I was perfectly able to push it down. The trader would come in and say, "It didn't happen. It didn't happen. It didn't
So you
happen."
were being gaslit by your trader.
My own trader within. That's perfectly said.
And that's it. It's
Mhm.
and the trader has a purpose because
Mhm.
it's thinks it's helping you, and
Mhm.
until you have the awareness of what it is
Mhm.
and befriend it. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I'm best friends with my trader because she
Mhm.
has a seat at the table, and
Yeah.
I listen to her, but I'm the
Mhm.
one driving the bus now,
Right.
right?
So when she does that and she says, well, they cheated, but maybe it was because you weren't around, like whatever thing they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to make it okay, I can say, you know what? Thank you. But abandonment maybe isn't the only thing we need to protect here. How about this is not a healthy place to be. So thank you very much. You need to go back in my pocket. And I'm going to carry on by walking away from something that's not healthy.
Yes. And so yours was in more of your romantic relationships.
Yes.
Mine was in my everyday. It was it was every day. It was just trying to be the good little girl, and to the detriment. And I know we've talked about this in other spaces, but like I would get physically ill. I mean, I've had shingles. I can't even count how many times. But
Mhm.
my final like crash and burn was my thyroid because I
Right.
wasn't speaking my truth.
I
I was
know that
saying everything that everybody else wanted to hear.
that isn't so perfectly like where your certain body parts takes on exactly what's going on.
Well, that's the thing. We've talked about Bessel van der Kolk's book, The
Mhm.
Body Keeps the Score,
Mhm.
and the body keeps the score. And so, as much as we try to put that emotional baggage somewhere, it's going to go somewhere and it's going to come out as physical disease. And mine came out as a Graves' disease, as a thyroid condition.
Mhm.
And I was speaking to another friend saying, I was doing this with you. And she's like, you have come such a long way of being able to like talk about this without any anger and without any like wounding. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yes, because I've accepted every part. Like, I am so beyond grateful to that beautiful 17-year-old woman who gave birth to me.
Mhm.
She gave birth to me. And I am beyond grateful for my parents for having adopted me and bringing me up and having gratitude for those parts.
Mhm.
My part is coming to grips with the stories that I may or may not have started in collaboration with others.
Mhm.
But that's the work I've done. And I know it's the work you've done
Mhm.
to get to this space where I feel whole. I
Mhm.
truly feel whole. But for a long time, I felt like a part of me was missing.
Mhm.
And, let's even go in one step further that just came forward for me is the knowledge of like DNA and how things
Right.
can be passed down. Like we didn't have any resources to know genetics.
Mhm. Right. That's true. And it was important to me though to want, I remember when and I'll get to that in a minute, I did meet my birth mom. Um,
Mm.
but I remember the importance to me of, and it sounds so silly to other people, I think, but is there something about her that's going to look like me?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I remember having my kids, I had one child before I met her. And I remember at that point thinking like, oh, thank goodness, because now I mean, she didn't look like me. She actually looked like my husband, but I remember thinking like, oh, she's a piece of, I have something that's it was just maybe silly to other people, but to me,
I get
it
it.
was, yeah. And so I will keep the information secret, protecting this group. But I have been not only blessed with meeting my birth mother at 26 years old, for the first time, and then not for many, many years, and then again later in life. But I recently connected with, she had two daughters with them, and we're actually getting together this weekend. So we've gotten together a few times. I adore them, and it's just wonderful to have them in my life now. Um, it's a
And how
connection.
does it feel? Because I'm gonna, and you can answer this or not, like the secrets, like the secret of like when you got first told, when, you know, I got told my sister was my half sibling, and the secret of like you meeting your half sisters, like, do you feel like that the secrets have been like lifted? Because I think that's a really big part of adoption, the
So
secrets.
it's, I will take that one step further with my family. I was brought up in a family of secrets. So this
Mm-hmm.
was just a piece of it. And it was one of the pieces that was troublesome for me when I feeling like an outsider in my family. That takes it beyond the adoption. Adoption was one piece. As you see, they didn't tell me until I was almost 10. And I was told, I was only told because they were afraid someone else would tell me, not that they wanted to tell me. So they were a family that had a lot of secrets. We had a lot of, we had addiction, we had infidelity, we had a, illegal arrest. We had arrests. There was a lot of stuff going on, and not me. This is the other, the other in the family, and I was a truth teller. I didn't belong there. I mean, there's a lot of ways that I didn't feel like I belonged, not just being adopted, but also just who I was very different. I didn't want to create. I was very, as you see on like social media, I tell it all. You know, this is who I am. So it took a while to get, you know, comfortable with, but this is, so the lack of telling the truth is, and the lack of still keeping secrets, I guess, about this, because I'm protecting someone else. If it was me, I would just say everything. But um, is part of my family's emotional DNA, not their internal, like, you know, not their DNA. The the what we're looking for, the culture, my
Yes.
family culture is secrets, 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 and that's not who I am. I am the truth teller. So it was definitely a piece. So the adoption was a secret, but so was everything else. It just went along with what
So, can I ask you a
I'm
question?
moving,
Did you
of course.
ever tell your adoptive parents that you had met your biological mom?
So I told them, I told them that I met her the first meeting. Um, I don't remember talking about it more than that
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want to hurt. I really was not trying to hurt them. I didn't want to hurt them. It was just that. And that's, you know, um, so I had a story when, you know, we talked about the searching. I did what you did. I went to the library and took out phone books and went through it looking for the name that was written on my birth certificate. What I didn't know is my birth certificate was a lie. There was nothing true on the name except for on the birth certificate except for the first name. I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
except for the first, yeah, and middle name, but the last name was incorrect. So I searched incorrectly, and came and started calling people. Like we talked about the book, Are You My Mother? That was my book. I did it. I called people up who had who had the name that I was thought was the real name. And I'm like, Are you my mother? I was born to that. Did you give up a child for that? I called and I called. And I came up with a person that actually said, Yes, it's me. I went to visit that person. So I went to Perth Amboy. And I called first and they said it's me and they were so excited. And we put together a Sunday dinner at their house. They invited 20 relatives. I walk in, it's this huge celebration. I walk in with my then boyfriend, who became my first husband. It's this huge celebration. Call me mommy, you know, or call me mom, whatever, mom. I meet the grandmother, and not that most of them, many of them are Polish. They don't speak English. And I well, you know, that's incredible. But I learned, I was told that my birth mother was Orthodox Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, they didn't eat pork, right? Or they didn't eat pig. So they bring out pierogies and they bring out, and then they tell me they bring out two hams. And I look at my husband or husband to be, like my boyfriend, and said, "This is not right. Something's wrong here because this is they're not Jewish, you know." And then I say, you know, what was the exact birth date of the? And it was like a few months off. And so I
Mm.
must have forgotten to say my birthday. Maybe I said the year and didn't say, you know, and they didn't say it, and we were both so excited that we didn't. And so there was this moment of silence, and of course, and whispering in Polish, right?
Yeah.
That we had made a mistake. And I felt horrible because I came into this person's home and you know and opened up something that shouldn't have been opened up. So, you know, and then of course feeling very sad after. You know, it's a funny story now, but being very sad after that I had not discovered who she was. Another piece also is I remember in high school, when I realized again, or actually middle school, when I had that dream and asked my father, was I adopted? Was that true or not? I started looking around at people that I thought looked like me. And I remember once, you know, this is like where the fantasy comes. I remember once sitting in homeroom or class,
Mm.
looking out, you know, like classrooms have a window and there was
Yes.
space in that window. And I looked up and I said, "Oh, my mom's checking up on me. My birth mom's checking up on me to make sure
Hmm.
I'm okay." And you build this fantasy um, of,
You do. I had the same thing. I'm going to take mine a little bit further. So,
yeah.
somebody had said to me, you know, you look a lot like Linda Carter, Wonder Woman.
Oh, you, hmm
And I was like, all of a sudden, I had this fantasy to the extreme that when I was like 15 or 16, I dressed up as Wonder Woman for Halloween. And it was like, could she be my mother? And it's like, it's all about that. And it's just like, but what it does is those stories and those fantasies take you out of actually being in like the present moment. It gives you this, you're just so like in the what ifs rather than being in the moment. So
hmm
it creates a lot of, for me at least, it created a lot of, I don't want to say the word dissociation, but I
yeah.
almost like lived this fantasy life in my head that no one else knew about.
Yeah.
And I said on the Instagram live, like I was, 7 years ago when I saw This Is Me, and Randall was walking around going, wait, could that be my mom?
Yeah.
Wait, could that be my mom? And I thought I was the only one who did that.
And you know, I do it. I did it. So.
Exactly. And it's like, but I thought I was so in my head and thinking that, but I
Mhm.
never verbalized it because it was like my own little fantasy world. And yeah,
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
yeah. So
Because you just, you know, you want them to care. You want to have an identity.
you
You,
want you want to be seen, and you want to be seen for who you are. But then there's this piece of you that doesn't know who you are, and you're. I
right.
felt like it was kind of in two different spaces, and yeah,
hmm
yeah.
Uh, did you ever search for your father?
I did not. I did not. Did you?
No, but I'm not going to tell why right now. When the book comes
Okay.
out, I will talk about it. I
Yeah.
have not.
Yeah, I also think for me, the birth name only had the mother's name because I had an amended
Right.
birth certificate.
Yeah.
So I didn't have, I know that my birth father's first name was Bruce, but I did
Oh,
not know any surname. So
hmm
for me, it was going down with my birth mother's name in that New York City phone book. Um, so it was, the mom was really kind of, I guess, what I was focused on. And
Did you
just
ever?
asking, just why. But I think I've come to the conclusion that, I mean, in my heart, I know she loved me. It's
hmm
just, society in 1963, society, even when we were in high school, if there was someone who got pregnant in high school, right, there was the shame and there was the othering. So I just am blessed that she chose to give birth to me and that she chose this path. And I thank her for that.
So and I had a copy. I guess I wrote out the letter. So when I find, so what happened was when I finally got my records opened, there was nothing real even in my records except the name of her aunt and uncle, which took care of her when she was pregnant and took her to the
Oh,
hospital. So the social worker who opened the records um, and then closed them took those names and called my great aunt and uncle. And I had a relationship with them for like 5 years because they said that um, we'll call her H, how, as my natural mother H, how that H wasn't ready. She was going through a lot of stuff in her life and she wasn't ready to know that I was looking for her. So had a relationship with my aunt and uncle, my great aunt and uncle, and until they were finally ready to tell her. I sent her a letter, which I still have, like, a copy of it. And I started off by saying, I love you. Thank you for your sacrifice, because she went through the pregnancy knowing she was giving me up. And I love her for it because I would have no life if she didn't do that.
yes.
And
Hmm.
so I never hated her. I mean, people can experience whatever they want. There's no right or wrong way to feel. For me, I never had anger toward her, ever. Um,
I did at one point, I'm going to
yeah, of
reflect, I felt like, why could you do this? But I was
course.
probably, 12 or 13 at that point,
Mhm.
not knowing what it takes to care for an infant and just feeling very wounded and abandoned at that point. At 12 or 13, you're just kind of, your hormones are going, your body is doing
Mhm.
things, and then you're not understanding.
Right.
So I do remember very vividly around that age having like, how, anger,
Mhm.
until I have the awareness now of, you know thank you, thank you, because pregnancy is a huge sacrifice.
Mhm.
Your body, your everything.
I did
Yeah.
know from my aunt and uncle that the that my that her mother, now it wasn't legal to have an abortion, but her mother
Correct.
was doing everything she could to get her to have an illegal abortion. Even so, she didn't tell her mom till she was 5 months pregnant. So if she had done that, she would have had a late term, what, 5 months, right? Illegal, coat hanger, who knows how it would have been done.
Hmm.
But she fought against that.
Hmm.
I never had a chance to really talk to her about that. But
Hmm.
but she fought against that. And so, I'm thankful, obviously.
Yeah, because
Uh,
you and I are here for
we're
that
here
reason.
and to
Yeah.
talk about it, right? But I definitely wanted to know why
Hmm.
she did. She was a little older than your mom. She was 19.
Hmm.
So I definitely wanted to know why, though, because it's
Hmm.
part of my story, right? And
Hmm.
again, something I can't talk about now, but will. But
Yeah. Hmm.
in my book, once that's out, we can talk about it. But it was important for me to know why.
Yeah, I think it's a core foundational, just,
Mhm.
why, just a very normal question.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so you mentioned that she was with her aunt and uncle. So there were specific places that, I'm going to use the air quotes, unwed mothers back
Yeah.
in,
Well,
that time.
we went to look at that place, remember,
Yeah,
for Alma to help
yeah,
people get records. Yeah.
to go and get your records. And so, moms were sent away to their aunts, to their uncles, to the
Right.
foundling hospital,
Right.
so that they didn't bring shame upon the family
Correct.
and all of that. So
Right.
really, it was a huge sacrifice to both of our birth moms to go through with the pregnancy and to
Correct.
complete the pregnancy, and we're here because of that. And you know um, I don't want to get political or anything, but I just am so blessed that she chose that choice for her. Because, like you say, there were other choices, not legal, but there were other choices, and
Safe,
each and every
so
day they weren't safe, exactly. Um, but your beginnings, and my beginnings, I just want to touch on something very important, that they've seen studies in, and bonding. And I know,
Mhm.
my daughters are pregnant and they're having babies, the skin to skin contact, the immediate contact.
Mhm.
And so in the adoption process, for me, what it was is I was born. For you, your mom was actually put out, right? You were born, and then you were handed to your adoptive parents a few days later. But for me, I was in an orphanage for 5 months. And so
Wow.
that immediate bonding also, I know there's that controversial study that maybe you want to just touch
Right.
on, but I think we should put it here because I really feel like it was a core wound of mine not having that initial bonding.
Hmm. I will read the definition of the primal wound because I
Yes,
think we're talking about this. But also,
yes,
before I even do that, I mentioned this in the IG Live also, that I remember very much so in my freshman year intro to psych class. I don't
yes,
remember the study, but it was a study about an orphanage. I think it was in Russia, so I can't remember where children were not picked up. They were literally like in their cribs the whole time. They were, fed. They weren't, I don't even think necessarily they were held when they were fed. And they said there were a bunch of babies that died, and they believe they died lack of being held, lack of skin to skin contact.
yes. In fact, there was, I referenced in our other Instagram that there's a one with monkeys where one monkey was just isolated alone, and then there's another monkey, baby monkey, who was given like a little stuffy, and the baby monkey that was given a stuffy,
Mhm.
actually just that little bit of contact allowed them to thrive, whereas the baby monkey that had nothing to attach to
Mhm.
potentially passed. So yeah, contact, skin to skin contact, but
Yeah,
cradling, not bottle propping,
right.
having some sort of contact other than a diaper change is
Mhm.
key. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, so the primal wound it's a term coined, sorry, introduced by Nancy Verer. I may mispronounce her name, in a 1993 book called The Primal Wound, Understanding the Adoptive Child. And according to the theory, bonding doesn't begin at birth, but rather represents a continuum of physiological, psychological, and spiritual events that begin in utero and continue through the postnatal period. The interruption of the natural bonding process through adoption creates what Verrier, sorry, describes as, quote, a wound which is physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual, a wound which causes pain so profound as to be described as cellular. Now, the reason I believe it was criticized is that there are some people that actually don't feel they have wounds, that they feel
Correct.
like it was, so I think that I don't think necessarily the criticism was it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I think if I understood the criticisms, it was more like it doesn't mean every child is going to be wounded.
Correct. And we talked about that.
Mhm.
But it's a great thing for people who are prospective adoptive parents or who are adoptive parents to look
Mhm.
out for that wound and have conversations about it,
Yes.
because that was something that it was that hole I'm talking about, which I no longer have, but it was like that. I felt like there was this piece of me that was missing, and
Mhm.
I call that that core wound, and it leaded to the feeling of being abandoned. And I've had dreams where I'm in the orphanage and don't know
Oh,
if they're real or not. I can just say these are dreams, and I'm screaming, and I have a dirty
oh,
diaper, and I'm screaming, and no one's coming, and it's that feeling of not being wanted, not being held. And so repairing that at 5 months is going to take a lot. So just knowing that that could potentially be there,
right.
to
Oh,
look out for it.
I'm gonna hold you. Just
I,
saying.
I'm great now because I can talk about it. And this is the
Right.
other thing too, like having when I met you in college, it was like the light bulb, because I was like, I can talk to someone else about this. And then
Right.
we went to the adoptees
Mhm.
meetings. It was like I came out into the sunshine of like, I don't have to hide this. This isn't something to be ashamed of. This is
Right.
something to be curious about and have conversation about.
It's part of your story.
It is. And I think it's been, like I told on the Instagram live, I was doing a breathwork journey, and the gentleman beside me was referencing what came up during his breathwork journey. And he said, I've always felt like the outsider in my family. I felt like I didn't fit in. In fact, he said, young man's name was Max. He said, I went up to my parents one time in the middle of something and said, am I adopted because I don't fit in? And immediately, like our facilitator, David Elliott, looked right at me. And David didn't know I was adopted, but he could feel my response to that.
Mhm.
And David goes, "How does that make you feel, Barb?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to tell you how it makes me feel. I'm going to, it's exactly what cultural conditioning is adoption is not belonging or not fitting in, rather than what adoption to me and my parents said was I was chosen, but
Mhm.
adoption had that other spin because it's the way it was said that they didn't belong.
Right.
So, it's how we perceive, and
Mhm.
again how we talk about adoption. Can we talk about it openly? And it is, I was chosen. My parents couldn't have a child and they wanted a child
Mhm.
so badly, they chose me.
Right. And we can't forget that for the people who
Yeah.
are adopted, again, that most people who are adopting are doing a lot of work to get there.
Yes.
They're waiting years, they're paying lots of money, they're going to other countries. It's a process. It's not easy because they want that child so badly. So, we can't forget that. But that doesn't mean the other things that we've talked about, even with knowing that, doesn't still make a person feel not whole or in pain or angry and then there's a grieving process too. Like if once you realize once you want to go through the process, possibly
Yeah.
of
But it's just about being informed, right? Just
right.
having the information. And your blog is absolutely a perfect resource for people who are going through, deciding to go through adoption or who have adopted, to just look at and see resources, how to talk to their child, whether they're 2 years old, newborn, or 18. It's not too late to start having these conversations and checking in with your child you've adopted to say, hey, we haven't had this conversation.
And your adult child, it doesn't have
And
to be your child.
and your adult child.
Yeah.
The thing is, as we know, you were 9 when you found out. If you're 25 and you're just finding this out, you may want to have some resources. So definitely listen to Jess's blog, read Jess's blog, because you do need those resources. The later, I mean, it's proven, the later the child is
Right.
told, you
Mhm.
need more resources to help you with that explanation and communication.
Right. And understand that being adopted, even if even if everything is done right, can still create a wound, can still play part in who your traitor within
Mm-hmm.
is. And there's a lot of therapies out there, which I listed in my blog.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't look for groups because I didn't know where people lived, and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
vet them myself. But there are groups out there, there's
Mm-hmm.
therapists out there that specialize in, which I did speak about. And you don't have to do this alone, and you're not alone. There are a lot of adoptive people who are adopted out there. And but I do think, which is not to, take it a little bit away from an individual adoption, but we have seen things on Netflix. We know these stories because now with 20 all these different DNA tests that people are
Mm-hmm.
doing, they're finding out that they were either as an adult, either they were adopted and never knew they were adopted, or there was one parent that wasn't the father that they knew. Like there, all this information is coming out, which they may never have known, and they have to deal with it as a grown-up, having
Correct.
no knowledge at all. And their
Mm-hmm.
parents could be dead and they can't even confront, or not even confront, but discuss it with their parent because maybe it's even after they had passed away. And so the DNA
But
thing,
that's the secrecy. That's the secrecy that,
right?
yeah.
But the DNA, oh my God, I keep thinking of this horrible story. It was a baby God, the one about the gynecologist
Yes.
that when it was impregnating,
Yes.
unknowingly. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh. And that
Mm-hmm.
was a police officer, ex-police officer, I think, who went to 23andMe and
Mm-hmm.
found out she had, like, I'm exaggerating, maybe 100 siblings out there that
Yes.
of us, didn't have any idea that there was even an other than her parents. So it opens up a whole this DNA test
Mm-hmm.
opens up a whole door, and of unknowingly, like it's not like people are searching necessarily. It's not like you and me,
Mm-hmm.
we would have maybe done it to find out who our who our birth parents.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who didn't even know that they are.
Correct.
that there's an other.
Correct. And so the resources in your blog are perfect for people who are going through this information and finding out. I have a neighbor who found that very same thing out, and it was um, very, the way she describes it, very confronting,
Mhm.
and created a huge rift in the family. So having a therapist, having somebody who can hold that space for this uncovery is key and important.
Yeah, you are not alone.
No.
So I'm serious before we close, and I'll ask you if there's anything else you want to say, of course. Um, we really should do a group, an online
Mm-hmm.
group for people who are or have been adopted,
Mm-hmm.
adults, and a therapeutic group. And if you don't, and if you would like to do breath work and
Mm-hmm.
also help
Absolutely, because
and co-lead the group with me.
that would be beautiful, because we all have different stories, and I would love to hear other people's stories. I mean, our stories are just two stories of two souls that have been able to do this. But as we hear more stories, we can hear our story resonating in someone else. Like parts of your story resonate with me. And it makes you feel less alone and less isolated.
Right.
Um, so I think that would be the goal of this group, is and to find regulating ways. Like I use breath work,
Right.
meditation to help regulate, because these things do come up. You confront some of these
Right.
things, or you might be having a bad day, and so
Hmm.
how can we cope with them with just very easy breath work techniques?
I think breath work is excellent
Yeah.
way of coping with being
Yeah.
triggered and the anxiety and what it brings up to calm down your
Yeah.
nervous system. And
Well, having those conversations, I said in our Instagram live, like, maybe if my mom, and I don't want to suppose, but took a breath, and rather than shutting down the conversation, maybe taking a breath, realizing, okay, this is activating something in me, but I'm going to have this conversation. And, just that awareness of this is bringing up something that, is activating, taking those breaths, and then speaking rather than speaking first,
mm,
gives you that moment to pause, because in that moment, that second or two moment, you can really downregulate yourself and then have those conversations.
mhm. Yes,
Yeah.
great. So is there anything you want to share before we close?
I think we've covered pretty much everything. Just how people can reach out to us. I put it in the show notes. So,
Mhm.
and I love the idea of starting a group of individuals who just want to tell their stories and have support.
So maybe we'll start January after the holidays. What do you think?
Perfect.
Okay, so I'll put
Perfect.
it together. I'll start, yeah, getting it together for us.
I
Thank you
love
for
it.
doing that with me. That's going to be
Yeah. Would love that.
because when I went into I started going into social work because of being bullied, but when I was trying in school and I was trying to form what if I was going to do a specialty or not, I was going to do adoption. I didn't in the end, but I was
Mm-hmm.
going to do adoption. But I think this is a good way. How many years later? Let's see, I graduated almost 40 years ago.
So
So
what just came to me too is maybe we want to open the group up to parents who have adopted. I know some
we had,
people who have
we would do
recently.
we would do two different groups because
Right.
we don't, so people can talk
Exactly.
openly, which they wouldn't necessarily do in front of the parents. But
Correct.
I think I would be happy to do two groups, one for the parents, a good idea, and then one for
So
the
that they could
children.
ask us, honest questions about how we felt, so that they can kind of gauge. Because as you know, we'll be honest and open with how we
Yeah.
felt.
Mm.
But that just came to mind because I do know quite a few people who have recently adopted.
I know people too. It's a good idea, or not recently, but who have
Hmm.
probably would be helped by this. So
Yeah,
two groups. We do
I
two.
love it.
Thank you. And thank you for being for being part of my life. And I love you. And
Mm.
you are an amazing soul.
It's just amazing what college and some popcorn can do, because it's
Right.
created this
Well,
beautiful
you know
friendship.
what? College, popcorn, and truth.
and and truth.
Truth.
Yeah, and sharing. You allowed me to be vulnerable and tell you I was adopted, and then you were vulnerable enough to tell
Right. You
me.
allowed me
So
to be vulnerable
yeah.
and tell you I was adopted. Same thing. I think, and then for us now telling our story, we hope we can give other people the permission to be
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable and tell their story.
Because you
Thank you.
matter, your story matters.
Your story matters, and we see you.